Hey, you caught me eating a raspberry. Recently, I've decided that I need to start eating healthier. I think we're all kind of in that same boat. So I need to do things or eat things that will make my body feel better. So now I eat more foods that are good for me. And I'm trying to stay away from the foods that are kind of bad for me. Now, when we talk about good foods, we're talking about healthy foods. And there can be a long list of things that are healthy foods, right? Vegetables, fruits, certain types of meats, and the list can go on and on. Now, there are certain types of bad foods too, like cookies, cake, ice cream, a bag of potato chips, jelly beans, okay? Candy. All of those things, they're not necessarily bad, but they're not healthy for us, okay? So they're not good for us to eat, because if we ate them every day, would we feel good or would we feel kind of gross? I know that when I eat healthy things or good things for me, like good fruits and vegetables, my body feels way better. But when I eat a lot of unhealthy things, like a lot of cookies, or I eat a lot of ice cream or a bag of chips, man, I feel terrible. I get a tummy ache. So when I make choices in my life, I want to make a choice that makes my body feel good. And I want to make a choice that doesn't give me a tummy ache at the end of the day. Did you know that there are other things in our life besides food that can be an unhealthy decision or a healthy decision? Did you know that those things can please God or they can displease God? Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you all guys some examples, and I want you to tell me whether or not it's a healthy choice or if it's an unhealthy choice. Helping my grandma clean the house. Healthy choice, right? I broke a plate, and I didn't want to get in trouble, so I blamed my little brother or sister and said they did it. Is that an unhealthy choice or a healthy choice? Unhealthy. I didn't have enough money, and I went to the store and I saw something I really liked, but it was too expensive. But instead of waiting to get the right amount of money, I decided to put it in my pocket and steal it. Unhealthy or healthy? Yeah, unhealthy. I saw someone the other day who was sad and kind of lonely. So I sat down and had a conversation with him. I talked with him. Is that a good choice? Or is that a bad choice? It's a healthy choice, right? So the choices we make in our life can be good for us and good for others, or they can be bad for us. The choices we make can be pleasing to God, or they can be displeasing to God. So today we're going to talk about 4 boys, and their names are Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now these 4 boys were given the choice to either follow God or to disobey God. Now these 4 boys came from the kingdom of Judah. Now Judah was eventually conquered by the Babylonian Empire. And when the Babylonian Empire conquered Judah, they took many of the young people from Judah all the way back to the Babylonian Empire. And Judah became a part of the Babylonian Empire, but they took them to the main palace where King Nebuchadnezzar was. Now, these young people, they weren't necessarily adults. They were between the ages of 12 to 15 years of age. So they were pretty young. Okay, so they were just really young kids. And they were taken far away from home. Now, I'm going to be reading from 1 Daniel, or Daniel chapter 1. I'm going to be skipping around just a little bit, and we're going to talk about these 4 boys. Okay, so go ahead and turn to Daniel, starting at verse 3. Okay, the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths in whom was no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. So basically, King Nebuchadnezzar wants good-looking kids and smart kids. He doesn't want anything else besides those things, okay? And he wants kids that can be taught the Babylonian culture. The king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated for 3 years, and at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. Now among them were sons of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The commander of the officials assigned new names to them. To Daniel he assigned the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. So why is he giving them new names? Well, basically, the King Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, wanted these boys to dress Babylonian, to talk Babylonian, to have Babylonian names, to look exactly like a Babylonian. He didn't want them to be any different than any of the people around him, okay? Basically, he was wanting them to forget that they were Israelites. He wanted them to forget where they came from and who they were and the God they served, okay? But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. And the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I am afraid of the Lord my king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. But Daniel said to the overseer whom the commander of the officials had appointed, Please test your servants for 10 days, and let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed in your presence, and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed better, and they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating the king's choice food. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Wow, that's pretty cool. So, what's the big deal about the food? And what's all this deal about not wanting to eat from the king's table? So King Nebuchadnezzar had wanted to change everything about these boys, right? We talked about that. He wanted them to have Babylonian names. He wanted to dress and sound like Babylonians. And he wanted to feed them like Babylonians. Well, he wanted those things because he wanted them to not remember that they were Israelites, to change them completely. But Daniel and his friends, they loved God and wanted to honor him. So they wanted to remain faithful to God's commands. Now, God had given the Israelites rules to follow, called the Mosaic Law. Okay, he'd given that to Moses on Mount Sinai, the Mosaic Law. And these laws dealt with everything in their life, even to the types of food they were supposed to eat and how they were to prepare those foods. Now, you can find all these laws in Exodus and Leviticus in your Bible. So, what's the big deal about food? Well, according to Mosaic Law, Daniel was not supposed to eat pork or meat that had been slain in a way that wasn't in accordance with the Mosaic Law. It means the animals that had been butchered or killed, they needed to be butchered in a way that God had commanded them to be. Daniel also knew that the king's food, King Nebuchadnezzar's food, had been used in the pagan worship of pagan gods or idols like Baal, that they'd been used in the temples of the idols, and he didn't want to have anything to do with that. So Daniel would not break God's law, and Daniel did not forget whom he served. Daniel, as a young man, had already decided that he wouldn't compromise his faith or his obedience to God. So when the Babylonians insisted that he eat from the king's food, Daniel refused. Now, Daniel didn't throw a tantrum, okay? He didn't shout, "No, I won't do this. No, 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 no." Right? Instead, he went humbly to the commander and he asked permission to abstain or not take part in the eating or the drinking of the king's food. Now, Daniel was a prisoner, okay? So for him to ask this favor was huge, okay? He was asking for special treatment. And if the king found out about it, not only would the guy who helped Daniel get this special food, not only would he be killed, but Daniel would be killed too. So it was kind of a big deal of what Daniel was asking. It wasn't just, "Oh, well, I don't want to eat this food, so bring me something else." It was a big deal. He was putting his life on the line. But God was faithful to Daniel. Okay, he grew him in wisdom and understanding, and all those 4 boys at the end of the 10 days, they looked better than the kids who were eating off the king's table, right? So God blessed them for their obedience, and he preserved their lives, right? Because the king didn't see any difference in them. And that was a good thing, because Daniel was able to keep God's commands and not disobey God. And God blessed him for that and kept him safe. I think that's pretty neat. Now, this isn't just a story about veggies or food. Daniel's story is really about choices. You see, Daniel could have decided that food wasn't a big deal, right? God, it's just food. Like, what's the big deal, right? But Daniel wanted to obey God. He chose God. He didn't forget whose child he was. And he didn't forget who he was in God. Daniel stood up for his beliefs, even if it meant dying for that belief. Daniel had been offered things that were pleasing to look at. They probably smelled great. I mean, I bet you they even probably tasted good. But Daniel knew that these things were only temporary. Daniel knew that those things would go away, but God never goes away. Daniel had been thrown into a world that didn't honor God. It was a world that was pagan, okay? It was a world that didn't know God. Yet Daniel didn't let his circumstances change who he was, and he stood up for what was right. He chose to remain faithful to God. Daniel's faith was pleasing to God, and God never deserted him. Now, to the Babylonians, they wouldn't have understood why Daniel didn't want to eat that food, because they didn't believe in God. They didn't follow God's commands. So to them, you could eat whatever food you wanted to eat, and it didn't matter. But Daniel wanted to honor God by honoring and obeying God's rules and God's commands. He was showing his loyalty and faithfulness to God through that. As a child of God, we should never let the things of this world change us. As a child of God, we will talk differently, we will act differently, and we will make different choices. We will make healthier choices, hopefully. And you know what? That's okay. We can be different. That's okay. Because guess what? God wants us to be different. He doesn't want us to be like the world around us. Even if the world doesn't understand why we're making that decision. Even if they say, why would you do that? I'm doing it because God tells me to. And I love him. Right? And it's okay to be different. We may be asked to do things in our life by people we love or by people that we know that are unhealthy for us, that are unhealthy choices, that are unwise, that cause us to disobey God. We may be asked to make those choices, but it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I will not do that. All right. And it's okay to choose to follow God instead. Now, those people may not always stay your friends because you didn't do what they were doing. But that's okay. You have a friend that never leaves you. He's your God. He is God, and he is your friend, and he will never leave you. So, choosing God is the right decision or choice to make. He never changes. He never leaves us. And he promises to guide us all through life's ups and downs. So Daniel's life was a testament to the power of God. Daniel's loyalty to God allowed God to shower love and mercy on him. Just like Daniel, we should always choose God. We should never let the new or different situations in our life change who we are and what we believe in. There will be times in your life and in my life that you'll have to choose to either follow God or to disobey God. I hope you choose to follow God. Choosing to follow God is the best decision. It's the healthy choice for our lives. God is and always will be the best choice. So have you decided to follow God? I sure hope you have. Now, if you're interested more in the book of Daniel and about Daniel, I suggest that you read the book of Daniel in the Bible. And there's lots of cool things in there. They talk about Daniel in the lion's den. There's a story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they get thrown into a fiery furnace, but God delivers them. There's stories about Daniel interpreting dreams for the kings. And there's also a story about God writing on a wall in the middle of a king's party, and Daniel has to come and interpret it. And there's also some things that Daniel was able to see that dealt with future empires and future civilizations. So he was able to, God gave him visions and prophecies for things that had not yet happened. So the book of Daniel is really, really interesting. So I suggest you learn more about him. So I'm so glad you were able to join me today and learn about what is healthy for us and what is not healthy for us.